When the time comes to choose an MCAT prep course, no doubt the Princeton Review or Kaplan or Blueprint will show up on your radar. But for good reason too. They are trusted resources of practice exams, instruction, and content review. But hand in hand with their premium services comes a premium fee that can rule these brands out as an option for many students and may not even be all that necessary if you're a fiercely independent learner that does just as well with instructional videos of a lesser celebrity. Either way, how you prep for the MCAT is an important decision to make. And here today to give us advice is MCAT prep expert Chad McAllister, whose website and YouTube channel, Chad's Review, is a rich source of MCAT content review courses, instructional videos, and practice tests and questions. And he offers these as a low-cost alternative to the instructional component of the premium MCAT prep courses, which is great if you're a little strapped for cash. But Chad also has valuable insights into how to go about making this decision. So here are the pros and cons of taking an MCAT prep course versus a do-it-yourself approach. All right, Chad, tell me, what's the difference between studying with an MCAT prep course and the self-study route?
Well, and obviously the cost, but we'll overlook that for a sec. And so obviously, one of your big name MCAT prep courses, they're going to provide you with, three basic things. They're going to give you some mode of instruction, and we'll talk about that in a second. But they're also going to give you a bunch of practice materials. In my personal opinion, this is the most valuable part of any prep course. And then finally, they're going to give you some sort of study plan built into this as well. And that's kind of, tied into the structure of having modes of instruction, stuff like this, but it's more comprehensive than just that as well. They're going to not only give you in-class times and stuff like this that are whether they're online or actually in person, but they're going to give you those, but they're also going to kind of tell you how to navigate through their own materials and stuff like that. That way you comprehensively are covering everything you need to before test day. Now, if you look at the in-class part of that, back in the day, this used to all be in person, and that was a big thing. And obviously this last year, that was very much not a big part of the way things are done and stuff like that. And it's starting to come back a little bit and stuff like that, but a lot more online these days, and some of that's live and some of that's pre-recorded, and it's just a mix depending on what company you're working with and where and stuff like that. But a lot of students think they're going to learn everything they need to learn, in that in-person or at least live or pre-recorded instruction. It's just simply not true. Yeah. The number of hours that you might have contact with an instructor, like say in an in-person class, there's just not enough time to review everything you learned in say, freshman biology, gen chem, O-chem, physics, biochemistry. There's just not, and they can cover quite a bit, don't get me wrong. So, but they're also going to split their time with the content review, also with strategy, which is also really important. In fact, a lot of them consider it more important and spend a little more time there. And so a lot of students just don't realize that a lot of the content review is something they're going to be doing on their own. So, and then you get to the practice materials, and lots of companies have just a boatload of practice materials, and these are really good. And a lot of the big name courses now also on top of their own practice materials are going to give you all of the AAMC practice materials, which I'll give a plug for. You should buy everything the AAMC definitely produces. They make the test, they put retired MCAT questions on there. You should definitely be going through all of that on top of anything else you're doing. But what's nice is most of them are giving you access to that too on top of their own practice materials, so that's good. And then finally, they're going to give you some sort of study plan to go through and stuff like this. And the truth is this is a really good thing, because I will say that, when I see students who are on the self-study side, if they don't do as well as they kind of should based on their capabilities and stuff like that, I would say probably 80% of the time it comes down to a lack of organization, a lack of structure in their planning and their preparation. So super important in that regard.
Okay, so if you're good at time management and pacing your studies, it might be a good option for you.
Yeah, and definitely something you want to spend a little time at the very front, just setting up a study plan. The AAMC themselves, they recognize this is a big deal, and they've got a free tool on aamc.org to help you set up your own study plan and stuff like this. So they recognize this is a shortcoming for a lot of students.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we kind of touched on it there when you gave us a nice breakdown of the official big review courses, but what are the pros and cons of these review courses?
So a couple of things. Obviously, the cost is the single biggest con. And, you're looking at probably a couple $1,000s, to get your foot in the door somewhere and stuff like this. And if you want more quality time with an instructor like that, you're going to pay more than that. And those usually start at least $100 an hour on top of that and stuff like that. So it can get pretty pricey fast. And I realize there's a lot of pressure weighing on this exam, and there's a lot riding on it. And then you compare it to the total cost of medical school and things of this sort. And you're like, okay, in that sense, it's a drop in the bucket. But at the same time, right now, a couple grand is cost prohibitive to a lot of students. And so that's the single biggest detractor from it and stuff like this. But the other side of the coin is the biggest part of the course. If you look, you can buy all their practice materials without purchasing the course for a fraction of the cost. Right. And again, in my opinion, that's the most valuable part of what you're purchasing. And so if you're paying for really a study plan and some in-class instruction, or at least pre-recorded lectures, something like that. And again, if that's the bulk of what you're paying for a couple grand, you can get those in other places. And again, you're getting the structure, and that's important. And I'm not going to say that, nobody should ever take an MCAT prep course. That's just completely false. But I am saying that, if it is really cost prohibitive, there are other routes to go and ways to get around taking that prep course. But, if $2 grand is not going to be, a big hurdle for you and stuff like that, by all means, not a problem. Take that prep course.
Okay. So what type of student is a great fit for then these big MCAT prep courses, aside from the money concern?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're wealthy and well off and mom and dad are paying for it, but
if you're a trusted baby.
That's right. So you got that silver spoon in your mouth. No, again, if you're at all organizationally challenged, if the structure is a huge advantage for you, if you want kind of the accountability as well, like having to, show up to class, even if it's an online class, having to show up there and things of this sort will kind of keep you accountable to a certain degree. And if that's going to be, you kind of got to evaluate yourself. You kind of, hopefully students know themselves at this point. And this stage of their academic careers, they can really honestly say, yes, I would benefit greatly from this, and it's worth $2 grand for me. But that's the single biggest, category of student that's really going to benefit from those classes.
Okay, so the courses we've been talking about are great for skills and practice, but for the rote knowledge component, the grunt work of memorization, what methods do you recommend students use to really drill that knowledge into their skulls?
So you've got to incorporate spaced repetition. So when you're going through your content review and stuff like this, you're trying to go back and relearn everything, from 2 to 3 years of your undergraduate experience and shove it all back into your head. And unfortunately, you're going to shove it in one side and some of it's going to leak out the other side. And, you're going to want to take advantage, of doing a ton of practice. Flashcards like Brainscape would be a fantastic thing to incorporate. And obviously, hit the things that you're definitely having trouble with. In particular and stuff like that. I mean, if you already know something, don't make a flashcard on it. It's already in your memory and stuff like that. Just really focus on those things that you're really still struggling with. And that doesn't just have to be like definitions and stuff, but you could put practice questions on there that you keep struggling with and make a flashcard out of that. That's a great way to go through. But you definitely want to, go back over things again and again. And a lot of students find out that, MCAT study is really broken up into 2 main parts. You got your content review. And a lot of students don't realize that when they're doing their content review, it shouldn't just be casually reading an MCAT textbook or something like this. It should have tons of practice and making flashcards all the way through. But then the second half is going to be really all about the practice. And it doesn't mean there's no content review, because you're going to find you get a passage on something that you're weak on, and you're going to have to go back and do a little bit of content review, but it's going to be much more centered on tons of practice. And the truth is that's going to be where you really, get your strategy in and your test taking, time management skills and strategy and stuff. Just the most important part of your studies. You can't get out of not doing the content review, but the practice again should have the preeminence. You're going to want to breeze through that, content review, still be thorough, but get through it, because that practice is really what you need.
Yeah. And don't learn linearly, don't do content review and then practice, like do them interwoven from the start right up until the MCAT.
Definitely. If you're not reinforcing what you're reading with practice, you're not really learning it. And you're going to find out that like you might've retained 10 or 20% of what you did.
Ouch. Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about self-study. What are the pros of a do-it-yourself study approach aside from greatly reduced costs?
Yeah. Well, that financial benefit is obviously the hugest reason and stuff like this. But also now, I mean, the plethora of resources that are out there is huge. It was not this way, say 10, 15 years ago, but now there is just a ton out there. And that has its pluses and minuses, right? Obviously sifting through the mountain of resources out there, and some are not so great and some are great and some are free and some cost and things of this sort. But one thing you can do, and you know, there's a lot of testimonials and reviews and people talking on Reddit and things of this sort about these different resources, and you can kind of get a consensus of, okay, what's good. And what you'll find out is that, you know, maybe this particular company's resources are best for chem phys, whereas this company's best for biochem, and this company's best for psych soc. And so instead of kind of pigeonholing yourself and being locked into any one company's resources, because you signed up for the prep course and got all their stuff, you know, as part of it, you can kind of take advantage of the best of every world, kind of a buffet approach and stuff. And there's a danger there. You know, a lot of students are like, well, I'm going to do every question in Princeton and Kaplan and exam crackers and Blueprint, and well, it's just not feasible. And it's overkill as well. But, you know, some people get pretty gung ho at the beginning thinking I can just do it all. And no, you can't. I mean, you have a couple of years if you want to devote to this, maybe you can, but you can't. And so but you can definitely take advantage of just getting the best of every world in that regard.
Yeah.
You find out also that, you know, most of your time is going to be spent studying alone anyways. And a lot of students don't realize that going in. They think, oh, I'll take the class and that's where I'll spend most of my time. No, that's where you're going to spend a very small fraction of your time. Most of it really is going to be spent alone. And I'm not saying you should never study with another person, but I'm saying probably most of your time you shouldn't study with another person. That can get very detrimental to your studies at some point and stuff. So, but you know, that's another big advantage, is just taking advantage of the different resources that are out there. And again, for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. I keep saying aside from cost, but actually, let's be honest, it is the biggest motivating factor. Okay, so what kind of student would be a great fit for a self-guided MCAT prep?
So, and this kind of is the counter student for those who'd be a good fit for, you know, students who are financially challenged at the moment. Definitely fits in there. But, you know, but if you're organizationally, you know, if you get your head together and stuff like that, if self-motivation is not an issue for you and stuff like this, yeah, self-study is going to be a great thing for you. And in fact, I've met a lot of students who actually felt like their time studying alone was much more valuable than their time attending MCAT prep classes.
Wow.
And things of a sort. And just because they could, you know, focus on what they're weak on and not have to keep rehashing what they're already strong on and things of a sort. And so, yeah, but that, you know, if you're already organized and, you know, can lay a good structure and can adhere to a plan and can also, like, you know, adapt a little bit too, because any plan you set up on day one, you're going to have to modify that here and there a little bit all along the way. Mm-hmm.
All right. Is there a danger that choosing this more affordable option may negatively affect students' MCAT scores?
Absolutely. So like I said, I'm not out here to say that nobody should take an MCAT prep course in this day and age. Not true at all. And again, if structure and organization would benefit you a ton, then by all means, sign up for an MCAT prep course. If the accountability of attending class on a regular basis would benefit you greatly, then by all means, sign up for an MCAT prep course, you know. Mm-hmm. But if you are one who's structured and organized, again, you probably find out that you might do as well or better than if you took the MCAT prep course, because, you know, at some point you got to take control of organizing your own time, but you might find instead of kind of being in this cookie cutter course, you can organize your time tailored to your specific, you know, strengths and weaknesses better. So, but, you know, there is still that danger, you know, and, you know, I will help a lot of students who will come to me after they're, say, you know, 1 or 2 months in, and they'll be like, so I'm like, so what have you been doing and what are you using and stuff like this? And I find out that they're just kind of like casually studying and they don't really have a plan. They're not organized. They don't see like, okay, I've got these 37 topics to cover. And no, they're just not organized at all. And I'm like, oh, slow down. If you keep this up in 2 months, you are going to hate the result that you get. And I kind of have to pause them in their tracks and things of this sort. But it's, you know, you definitely got to be very organized, man. I get to the point where I say, you want to set up a schedule where every day of the week, and maybe you're taking a day or two off a week and stuff like that, but every day for the next 2 to 3 months or more, you know exactly what you should be covering. And again, they may have to modify it along the way, but I mean, it really is kind of to that degree of organization. Yeah.
You got to be quite anal about it. If you're the kind of person who rolls out of bed on a Saturday and then decides what you're going to do on the weekend, maybe you got to analyze your personality for self-guided MCAT study.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, considering it's the wild, wild west out there on the internet, how can students find good quality instructional materials for self-study? I know you touched on looking at reviews and what other students have had to say. Yeah.
I would definitely recommend, you know, talk to the students who've walked the road already. So talk to some of your peers at your university and if you're at a university anyways, and who took it the previous year, the year before that and stuff like that, and find out what did they benefit that from and stuff. Get on Reddit. You know, Reddit's got a good list of forums. And I will tell you this though, don't put too much stock in any one source for any of this.
Yeah.
A lot of students will come to me like, I had one friend who just said that this particular resource was the best thing ever and stuff like this. And I'm like, well, what else did they try? Well, nothing. Well, then, take that with a grain of salt. And so don't put too much stock in any one person, myself included, or anybody, right? And also, not everybody is going to learn with the same, styles and kind of respond to the same way to the same videos or prep courses or anything like that. So just kind of take everything with a grain of salt and kind of try to establish a consensus and find out like, oh, that's what this is really good for. And like, oh, I know one person total who's heard of this resource and I probably should stay away, and things of the sort. And it does make it difficult for people who are trying to make new resources and stuff like this. And but you don't have to be somebody's guinea pig either. So
yeah, I know.
And I say that because I'm in the year that I'm releasing a new MCAT prep playlist and stuff like that, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't expect this to be the kind of thing that catches on from day one. So
yeah. Okay. All right, well, you just brought up the topic, but on that subject of your website and YouTube channel, Chad's Prep, how can you help students prepare for the MCAT?
Well, the stuff I've had on there for the last several years has really been just designed around like the college courses themselves. And I will say, I used to teach a class for incoming freshman chemistry majors. And it wasn't really a chemistry class. It was like help them adapt to university life and stuff like this. And we would actually spend an entire day talking about, so you want to go to medical school, you want to go to dental school, something along those lines, which was great getting to talk to them as a freshman because, I can't tell you how many times I've had students who are in their senior year and come up and talk to me and be like, hey, Chad, I'm thinking about going to med school. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and you're in your fourth year, your senior year, and you're not going next year. I can tell you that. You're already not applied for that cycle. And even then, you're probably not going the next year after that because you've got a lot of, boxes to check that you haven't yet, but getting to talk to these freshmen, it was great because I get to let them know, like from day one, here's what you need to be doing. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I gave to them is when you're taking your core science prereqs, strive for mastery from day one. Right. Because if you achieve mastery when you're taking it in your undergrad, it'll be so much easier to relearn it when you're studying for the MCAT.
Yeah.
Don't just try and get that minimum A or worse, but actually, strive for mastery of that topic. Really dominate, Gen Chem, OChem, physics, biology, biochem, because when you go to relearn it for the MCAT, it'll be so much easier.
And don't leave if you don't understand something. Take care of it right now. Don't try and squeak by and then that's future you problem.
Yep. So
when people go to your YouTube, what are they going to find there? What can help them?
Right now, I've got 3 major subjects on there. I've got Gen Chem, OChem, and physics, and I've got a couple different OChem playlists. I just made a new one this last year during the pandemic, and before that, I had one that was kind of a PowerPoint and a green screen. And this one, I put a whiteboard up in my home office here and had a little fun all year long.
Yeah.
But they're designed around the entire college course. They're very comprehensive. They're going to include a lot of subjects that would either be low yield or just not as likely to appear on the MCAT and stuff like this. And but you'll find what if you want to go brush up on fluids in physics, well, you'll find a whole chapter on fluids and stuff like this. But it's not really tailored to the MCAT in any specific way. But later this summer, I will be coming with a tailored and condensed playlist specifically for that MCAT and stuff. And it won't be on my YouTube channel, unfortunately, but it will be in a premium course on chadsprep.com. On top of that, I do have a couple other free courses on chadsprep.com for both physical chemistry, which is not on the MCAT, but also for an elementary biochem course as well.
Okay. So watch this space for that prep course.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, Chad, well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I think you've given us some excellent advice for students making that decision as to which route they want to take.
You are very welcome, Thea. It's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, and you as well. Well, there you have it. The pros and cons of the more celebrity MCAT prep courses versus a self-study approach, and what student is a better fit for each. Armed with these insights, I hope you have the conviction you need to decide between the two. Just remember that while this may feel like a scary decision, the power lies entirely within your hands to do well. If you plan your studies well, consistently put in the time, and practice MCAT questions and exams throughout your prep, you'll set yourself up for success, no matter how big or how itty-bitty the brand name behind your review course is. If you are preparing to take on the MCAT, make sure you get Brainscape certified MCAT flashcards in your corner. We have distilled down and organized the science content you need to know into an awesome collection of smart flashcards, which are proven to help you learn and remember content twice as fast as traditional study methods. Armed with these, you'll keep up that healthy cadence of daily review that is so essential for landing high scores on the MCAT. And for even more guidance, check out the other videos we have on Brainscape's medical channel, including more interviews like this one. And go to our MCAT Academy for free study guides on everything you need to know to prepare for and ace the MCAT. These tools, together with your ambition and hard work, is everything you need to rise to your challenge.